Hi everyone and welcome to your horoscope for the week of September 28th, 2020. This horoscope is brought to you by 1millionnights.com. We have an active sky, but unfortunately it is full of tension, it is full of conflict, and even a really unstable psychological energy which is going to dominate from an energetic perspective all throughout the week. Because on one hand, Mars retrograde is still holding the squares with Mars and Pluto mainly. Also at the same time, around the 29th of the month, Saturn is going to stand still in the sky and prepare to go direct. And whenever a planet stands still in the sky, that means that it's that much closer to Earth, so its symbolism is greatly amplified, and usually its shadow expression is what manifests more likely on the world stage and also in our individual lives. And when it comes to Saturn, especially in its home sign of Capricorn, well, we know that it's rules, regulations, it is limitations, it is law and order, obey the rules, and all of this can be accomplished, so to say, in a rather abusive and manipulative way, because Saturn at this time is conjunct Pluto, and Pluto can be seen as, the shadow, as manipulation, as excessive use of force, and that force can, for example, be legislative power. So Saturn is responsible, basically, with the stability of all the rules and regulations. So if they get stricter, if they get more assertive, if, there are new social distancing rules in place, well, they are going to be enforced by that Pluto. So basically, that means law enforcement, that means the coercive power of the state. But this energy also has a totally different aspect, because this is a square, and Mars is not alone in its home sign of Aries. It is conjunct Eris, goddess of discord and rebellion, and also Dark Moon Lilith. So we also have a very powerful Mars fighting back, so to speak. And Mars in Aries is basically the symbol of the individual, of the citizens, of, people in general who are standing up for themselves and protecting their sovereign rights. And because of Saturn going direct and on the 29th of the month, all of this big theme of, protests, uprising, and people not wanting to accept the limitations, the rules, the regulations, the traditions, so to speak, well, this can intensify that much more on the 29th, and of course on the 1st as well, because on the 1st of the month, we're going to have a very, very emotional, assertive, angry almost, full moon taking place in the sign of Aries. And what is really special about this energy is that the moon is conjunct Chiron, so the sun projects its light, its luminary qualities, shedding truth, light, knowledge, awareness onto exactly our wounds, Chiron. And Chiron conjunct the moon, our soul wounds, everything that actually bruised, scarred, hurt our hearts, our souls, our inner world, our emotional traumas, our shocks, everything that we cannot forgive, everything that we cannot forget. And, Chiron is also in this part of the sky responsible for our deep ancestral traumas, some of which can have to do with the culture we belong to. For example, one of the biggest manifestations of Chiron in Aries was at the time when Mars was conjunct with Chiron, activating it, energizing it, and that was basically the start or the very first episodes of the Black Lives Movement. So we can expect similar themes playing out on the world stage and even in our personal lives, because other people, the sun in the sign of Libra representing all of our relations, all of our contracts, our partnerships, Those people who are one way or another important in our lives and are a lesson for us as well, personally, well, they can wound us or remind us of our wounds or trigger something. So this is a rather assertive energy here. There can be some angry words, there can be, like an emotional explosion of the truth, of how we are truly feeling. And if all of this, is likely to take place in the lives of others as well, well, that can just create a big emotional bomb, so to speak, like a lava pool of emotions, burning, scorching, singeing everyone who gets near it. So we can expect around this time a lot of drama, a lot of deep emotions, anger, hurt, etc., surfacing from our unconscious, even from our conscious, from our relationships, everything that we might be doing in that period can just simply remind us of our wounds and pull our hurts onto the surface. But of course, this isn't any kind of bad karma or celestial punishment, but rather quite the opposite. These feelings, these repressed emotions, our scars and wounds have to be pulled to the surface so that we can purge them out and ultimately heal them, because all of this big global theme is going to get that much more intense, that much more assertive as we progress into the autumn. So we need to be our most balanced, healed, wound and scar-free self, so we can think rationally, so that our emotions can empower us, and most importantly, so that we can experience life without fear, without paranoia, without anxiety. We have to be faithful, we have to trust ourselves, and we have to be aligned with our self-worth, because that is the only way that we can survive all of this massive turmoil, especially emotionally, because this in itself, this massive pivotal point, this turning point, this deconstruction of the old order, when basically our old normality vanished and disappeared in a couple of seconds back in March, for example, well, this is where it can leave a trauma. This can be really, really hard. This can be really savage for some people out there who might find themselves struggling very, very hard. So this is trauma written all over it. And in order to make sure that none of these events turn into hurts, turn into traumas, wound us for the, distant future, the only way we can protect ourselves and our inner beings is basically to stand from a place of wisdom, to stand from a place of greater awareness, but also detachment and diligence, of course. We have to do what we have to do to protect ourselves. And sometimes if you just have to detach from the outer drama, from all the rage, pain, injustice, cry out for equality, for our rights to be respected, well, then that is what we have to do. Sometimes we just have to detach when things get too heavy, too hard, too confusing, too stressful. Because if we choose to stay in the frequency when it is too much for us, then that is where it's leading us to yet another trauma. And we really, really don't need that, especially because we cannot survive this autumn in a very balanced and in a rather optimistic and positive way if we don't protect ourselves. Especially our emotions, because that is exactly what all of this is going to trigger, our emotions. And sometimes our deepest feelings, because at the same time we start the week with Mercury having entered the sign of Scorpio, and that is a lot of unconscious energy. Now, if Chiron in Aries activated by the moon is our ancestral traumas, our deepest wounds, which are basically in our instincts already, then Mercury in Scorpio as it traverses, and of course it's going to go retrograde in this part of the sky, well, basically that evokes all of our repressed emotions, all of our hidden unconscious energy. For example, That part of our shadows which we don't want to acknowledge, which we don't want to confront. All of us have, like, for example, envies. All of us have jealousy inside of us. All of us do feel sometimes rather left out, abandoned, and then that is our self-victimization tendency. And even if we basically shut it out from our consciousness and do not allow these energies to interfere with us, well, that doesn't mean that we solved anything, because they're basically just buried in this bridge between the conscious and the unconscious, the subconscious mind, so to speak, the symbolism of Scorpio, as in the occult, everything that is arcane and hidden. And that is where these feelings, these very tricky, illusionary feelings, so to speak, that is where they hide. And one way or another, at a certain moment in our lives, all of us have to confront them, because they're not gonna go anywhere. And also, Mercury in the sign of Scorpio can represent all of our past, especially from an emotional perspective, everything that happened to us, everything that we went through, all of the lessons. But this isn't like big philosophy, for example, like the sign of Sagittarius. This is rather just a memory, an emotional state recalling how we felt maybe 10 or 20 years ago. So it is still a rather unconscious, raw energy which can really, really interfere with us. So the only way we can put this to good use if we cooperate with it. If an emotion, a memory, may that be a nostalgic moment or a very painful moment, surfaces, well, we have to allow it to sink in and deliver the message, because our unconscious minds want to communicate with us all the time, because that is where true guidance, intuition, etc. live inside of us. But the problem is that Mercury is gonna start opposing Uranus, Uranus being in the opposite sign of Scorpio, the sign of Taurus. And when these two planets of the mind, Mercury the lower mind, our practical thoughts, our ingenuity, our intellect, our know-how, problem-solving skills, and Uranus, our highest principles, our philosophies, the objective reality, our highest cerebral activities, our higher self, basically, the divine intelligence being alive inside of us. When those two planets speak in this kind of manner, well, that can be powerful purges, epiphanies. It can be sudden realization, unexpected twists and turns of events, emotions instantaneously without any explanation, coming and going, shifting. So that is, an emotionally speaking, a very unstable period. So we have to really be ready for this. So it's gonna be a rather tough week emotionally, because, Mercury, we start the week with Mercury and Scorpio. That's one element which can trigger our emotions. Then we have on the 30th, Neptune conjunct the moon in the sign of Pisces. That is also the past, that is also the unconscious, even a soul level kind of hurt, pain, etc. Then on the 1st we have the moon conjunct Chiron and this full moon phenomenon. That is like a massive emotional bomb. That is like boiling water in a pressure cooker, and then the steam builds and builds up, and there is one point where it has to explode and detonate. That is going to be the full moon. And at the same time, because at this time we're going to have a fire trine in the sky, Venus is trining Mars and the galactic center is trining both of them. This can mean like physical fire, physical explosion. This can mean where the physical reality from a quantum perspective mirrors what's going on in our souls. And that can mean, like proper explosions like the ones we saw in Lebanon, for example. It can mean like unexpected protests, like emotional explosion. It can be violence and can be clash between citizens, protesters, demonstrators, and law enforcement, military. It can also be a moment when, things in Belarus spike out of control. There is a lot of assertive energy in the sky at this time. And we can also expect, everything which has to do with electronics technology, the internet communication via the internet, or satellites and stuff like that, to go wrong, because Mercury is in shadow. So that means that it's already basically containing the retrograde vibes, and then it opposes Uranus, the planet of chaos, basically. So that means errors, bugs, unexpected behavior from the software, accidents, breakdowns, collapsing of servers, of internet domains, etc. So that means a lot of electronic misfortune in the air, so to speak, if we can use this term. And it's not just Uranus which provides us with a really strong energy of the unexpected. We also have at the very beginning of the week a quincunx that Venus forms with Saturn. And this energy can represent shocks, surprises, delightful moments, maybe humorous and funny moments, shameful moments, which come and enter into our lives unexpectedly. But it can also represent that certain rules and regulations, Saturn can trigger us in a really, really hard and savage way, because Venus at this time is in the sign of Leo. That is our heart spaces, what we love, but at the same time all that we reject and passionately oppose as well. So Venus can be really, really triggered. And of course she holds a trine with Mars, so that is a really strong warrior energy. If something irritates and triggers, the feelings in our heart, well, that is when we won't lack courage, we won't lack strength, determination to lash out and just stand up for ourselves. But another way that this quincunx can manifest, well, Saturn is the planet of manifestation, especially in its home sign of Capricorn, and Venus in Leo is everything that we truly love inside our hearts, our passions, our desires, everything that makes us happy. So concentrating on certain emotions and feelings of what would make us that much happier, or make us feel passionate, make us feel in a state of sensuality, concentrating on that, on all those things, can have unexpected manifestations, because Saturn might just give us what we desire, but perhaps in either an excessive way or just a symbolic way. It won't meet our expectations, but this is the energy. Be careful what we wish for, because if we are truly not ready to accept it, to receive it, then this can be a very tricky situation, basically an irony, a humor coming from the hand of fate. And yet another manifestation of this energy is rather karmic, because Saturn's most unfavorable expression can represent temptations coming from karma, coming from fate, divine temptations basically, meant to challenge you. And Venus in the sign of Leo is not someone who can resist temptations that well, because she's so very sensual, she is full of desire and passion. And when you get something that you really, really wish, you really, really love, it's really hard to say no, even if saying no is the rational and logical choice. Also, speaking about Venus, on the 2nd of October, we have to be rather careful, because Venus is going to be in a degree which is called an erratic degree of the sign of Leo. That can be overconfidence, that can be a really strong energy of the ego, when we are basically slaves to our desires and passions, so it's not a very healthy energy. So we have to be really careful not to overspend, not to take very big risks, especially like financial risks, as Venus can be currency. Even though, this can be the kind of energy when we really feel that we deserve something, especially something that we were longing for a long time now, and we have a small chance of getting it, but that chance requires a massive sacrifice or investment or a risk. This is where we have to be patient and not just give into this temptation of fate, and not follow to, perform that risk, or take the chance, because it can lead us to losses, it can lead us to a situation which might be outside of our control, especially if that is like an overspending. The debt will remain in our lives no matter what we do, regardless if we get what we want or not. And this is perfectly valid if we feel like doing some radical cosmetic change, for example, like a haircut or anything which is rather permanent. It is not a good idea to do anything like that on the second, because we might regret it so very much after Venus leaves the sign of Leo, as in that same day, where she enters the sign of Virgo, where her symbolism is totally different. By now we will have 2 planets debilitated. Or better said, 3 if we take Jupiter into consideration as well. The Sun is in fall in Libra, and then Venus is going to be in fall in the sign of Virgo. But that is not really bad news, because I do really think that this is what we need in the present moment to, survive and make it through in a very balanced and, equitable way, because Venus in the sign of Virgo is very, very practical. She is rather cold, she is not that sensual, she is not that passionate, but she is very committed, she is very diligent, she wants to serve the others, she thinks about her own good but also the greater good. So that is everything that we kind of need, because if there is a certain rational energy which completes our basically heart space, our intelligence of our emotions and heart, because Venus is going to be in a very strong mercurial sign, as in a sign ruled by Mercury, Virgo. So like it or not, she has to be rather rational, calculated, logical. This is where it gives us the chance and the opportunity not to basically fall into illusion when our passions, our love, our emotions can trick us. So Venus moving into the sign of Virgo is a really, really good energy for this present moment circumstance that we all of us are going through together as a collective. Because if more and more and more of us are very rational and can simply not give in to either rage, anger, even any kind of temptation, well, that means that we can inspire a lot of other people to do the right thing, to do the rational, the logical thing. And of course, with Venus in the sign of Virgo, all of us are that much more preoccupied by our well-being, by our health, by our bodies, by our material stability especially. This is the energy of foresight for the future. Simply knowing that we have a big chance to be okay in the future gives us a peace of mind and a comfort in the present, and that is a massive power which can help us accomplish so very many things. Because when we do not fear anything and when we are motivated to be that much okay in the future, that is already a blessing. So Venus in the sign of Virgo might not be the best energy for romance and love, because she cannot express her higher qualities. But physically and materially, it is the right energy, because it is diligence, it is saving up, it is thinking about the long-term future. So it is exactly what we need to make it through. And of course, there is a beautiful, harmonious grand fire trine in the sky as well. Mars is trining Venus, and then the galactic center from 26 of Sagittarius trines both of these planets, forming the grand fire trine. And this is like a celestial infusion of courage, the power of love, the power of passion. This is an energy which can truly help us dispel fears, dispel anxiety, dispel the grip that traumas and fears and insecurities have over us. It is almost like an energy of divine intervention, when it is not just us trying to be strong, trying to be brave, trying to fight and stand up for what we believe in, but this is also where the galactic center, infinite creational energy, the heart of our galaxy, the divine heart, so to speak, sends us this power of cosmic love to heal us, to empower us, to give us the courage to do everything that we need to do. And that can also be an energy of luck, because Venus is the lower benefic, so to speak. So she bestows blessings, she bestows good fortune, she is linked to values, money, currency, etc. So this can even be a very lucky energy, especially with that Mars retrograde in Aries, giving us the determination and the willpower to attract what we need into our lives, especially things that we need urgently to finish things left from the distant past, Mars retrograde, to clean up our lives, to declutter our lives, to, for example, terminate obligations, duties which no longer are relevant in our lives. Venus, for example, to pay off debt, to sort out an issue with the bank or an authority, for example, to recover something someone owes to us. And the galactic center from the sign of Sagittarius can simply infuse us with faith, belief, with creational energy, with, a divine spark which makes us that much more attractive to draw in everything that we need in our lives. And of course, there is another aspect, which is, a rather long-term aspect, where Neptune sextiles Jupiter, which is basically our faith, our beliefs, our optimistic tendencies, our highest principles, our connection to divine justice, knowing that, earthly justice is imperfect and flawed by nature, but we always have a chance to draw in divine justice. And on the 30th of the month, as I said, of September, Neptune is going to be conjunct the moon just before the full moon in Aries. So this sextile is going to be held by the conjunction of Neptune, moon, and Jupiter. So that gives it a power infusion of the soul, because the moon is the symbol of the soul, our emotional world, and even our unconscious. And Neptune is the divine source. It is basically the divine illusion, if we can call it that way. And when these three power players speak together in such a manner, well, what we dream, what we truly believe in, the inner truth, the truth inside our souls, can manifest and just turn our situations around. So even though we might be facing rather assertive, angry, frustrating, stressful times because of that Mars squares, we still have celestial help in the sky. All we need to do is tune into it and just fill our souls, feed our souls with that energy of faith and optimism. And we are going to be needing all of the optimism, positivity, hope, and faith that we can possibly contain within. Because, as I said, on the 29th of the month, Saturn is standing still and preparing to go direct. So that means that restrictions and rule regulations, everything that has to do with the symbolism of Saturn, gets real this time. So it's going to be really, really intense. And, this is where it's going to be limiting us, all of us, one way or another. And with that full moon taking place on the 1st, well, a lot of people are going to fight this. So they are definitely going to take to the streets. They're going to go protest. They're going to physically fight for what they believe in, their sovereignty, their rights. The sun in Libra, equality, equity, fairness, justice, as in greater expression of justice. And at the same time, we can also see all of this playing out on the world stage, where maybe certain nations, certain countries are going to renegotiate their treaties, their diplomatic relationships. This is when very important historical documents like treaties, which basically gave birth to a certain paradigm internationally speaking, as in the relations between the states and alliances, are going to be also changing in the coming weeks. So, this can totally reconfigure everything. And when everything changes around you, and this change happens every single moment of your life for the coming weeks, well, that can be an energy of confusion, because how do we react to so many changes? How do we react to every bit of normality basically fading away from our perceptions? Well, a lot of people are gonna be rather fearful, are gonna try and seek their truth, their visions, what their opinions even, what they think about this, how they want to react to it, what this means to them personally, in external sources like the internet, social media, they take on the opinions of others, and that might not be the very best idea, because this Mercury-Uranus opposition and Mercury retrograde period is gonna be when the truth truly lies just within us. Because external truth is gonna be so very confusing and multi-dimensional even, that we might not really have a chance to even know or get to figure out how we feel about this, what it means to us, what we should take as granted, what we should believe, and what we discard as half-truth or deception, manipulation, lies, conspiracies. So it's not gonna be very straightforward. And this isn't just the Neptunian type of confusion, when it's just feelings, when it's just, a matter of what we believe and what we choose to believe. This is when even our rational minds, Uranus, our highest cerebral activities, are gonna be chaotic, and that means confusion. That means that it's gonna change very, very quickly. We might have a certain vision, an opinion one day, and the next day something happens on the world stage, and everything that we thought and believed until that moment instantly changes, vanishes, or we have to go back to the drawing board, so to speak. So this is the kind of energy that awaits us next week. I do hope you enjoyed this horoscope, and as a final guidance, I have to say this: do not fear it, because fear will not get you anywhere. If anything, fear is our greatest enemy. And that is the psychological force which truly enslaves us and even takes away our dreams and our, most sacred principles, the freedom of our thoughts. Because, it is exactly these things that I said that cannot be taken away by anything, anyone, not even the divine forces, except fear or the manipulation of another person, where they send us and keep us in fear. Now, if you'd like a personal reading, just log on to 1millionnights.com and find your dedicated advisor. And also, please benefit from our September offer, where we give away 10% bonus on all our prepaid packages. So please feel free to check it out. Thank you once again. Wish everyone a safe and blessed week. Until next time, bye for now.